Heidi, thank you.
All comments, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of management, KM Media, or the Brushwood Media Network.
Welcome to Unscripted Politics, where headlines get unpacked and spin gets shredded, and real talk takes center stage. Hosted by Kevin McDonald and Dr. David D. Shine. This isn't your typical political commentary. We're diving into the story shaping our world. From power plays and policy shifts to the cultural chaos no one wants to explain. But we will. No scripts, no fillers, no corporate gloss. Just sharp insights, straight up truth, and a few shots of sarcasm along the way. If you're tired of the noise and ready for bold, unapologetic conversation that cuts through the BS, well, welcome home. This is Unscripted Politics. And welcome to a very special episode of Unscripted Politics. We've got Dr. Shelley is here, Dr. Shelley Jones-Holt, and she has become, and I need to do a new opening because she's become a regular part of this little escapade that we do, and I'm so happy that you're here, Dr. Shelley, and we've got a tremendous guest with us today, and her name is Heidi De La Cruz, and she is... Well, we're going to get into all of that in just a second. But before we begin, I do need to say that this last week we lost a icon in the film industry. Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner were both killed. And it was a sad moment for everybody. And I need to make this that the Brushwood Media Network is very close to All in the Family, Rob Reiner, his family, and one of my favorite movies of all time is Stand By Me. If you haven't seen Stand By Me, you have to watch it. It's a great film, and we lost an icon. And I wish everyone would have said great things about him rather than what some people said. I'm not going to repeat what the President of the United States said because it is worthless and not worth talking about. But I wish that he was older than 10. That would have been nice. But we are so... And Dr. Shelley, do you have a comment on that?
I do. I first of all, condolences to not just Rob Reiner and his family, but there are many people who were touched by the way that Rob Reiner moved in Hollywood. He understood exactly where he was. He also understood, and I shudder to think that this is not in any small part due to his relationship with Carol O'Connor, who is related to the person, I believe it's Steve, who is running the Brushwood Media Network. But when you look at his history and the experiences that he had, particularly in All in the Family, because that show had so many topics of the time that it was addressing, race being one of them. And it was very clear that Carol O'Connor's perspective was very different from Archie Bunker, which created a lot of cognitive dissonance for him in playing that role. And as a result, Rob Reiner, being so young and influential at the time, beginning to see and witness Carol kind of experiencing that role, some of the things that he would want to say, not want to say. And Rob Reiner himself spoke about how that relationship helped him to shape how he viewed the world. And that is what we need in this world, not to politicize things that don't need to be politicized, but to actually look at what's happening. You figure out if we have some power and use our power for good. And that is what Rob Reiner, which in no small part was due to his relationship with Carol O'Connor, did in his life, is he used his power to elevate people's careers. There were so many people in Hollywood that came out just speaking about how he gave them their first shot or how he inspired them. And for the record, he was very clear that he wanted to be known. His legacy was Stand By Me. That's the film he wanted to be known by. And When Harry Met Sally's ending was shifted based on his relationship with Michelle Singer, who eventually became Michelle Reiner. And so the fact of the matter is, folks, this exists. People do use truth and power to do good things. And that's what Rob Reiner is known for. That's what he needs to be known for. And the fact that there are ignorant children with political titles that are saying things that are completely inappropriate for times like this is something we're not going to spend too much time on, but we're going to focus on the legacy of a great man and a great woman. And unfortunately, it looks like possibly family tragedy or family trauma may have been what took him out. And this is another topic we talk about quite a bit on this show. So thank you for bringing that up, Kevin.
Well, and Norman Lear created All in the Family, and one of my favorite moments, there was a guy, and he was a noted comedian, a actor, and his name is Sammy Davis Jr., and that was the first time. Now, on Star Trek, there was a kiss by a man and a woman, but it was the first time that a black man and a white man kissed on screen, and that was Archie Bunker and Sammy Davis's character. Yep. It was the biggest deal in the world at the time. And if you weren't around then, you need to go on YouTube and look up that episode, because Archie Bunker was it was a tremendous thing. So yes, it was. And I'm sad to say that we lost an icon and his beautiful wife as well. And it's so sad, the family tragedy, which on another episode, Dr. Shelley, we need to address that in depth about family tragedy and drug addiction and all of those things that contributed to this horrible event that happened last week. But having said all that, we have got a wonderful guest here. Her name is Heidi De La Cruz. She's a podcaster of note. She's kind of like the Meryl Streep of podcasting.
Ooh, we got a celebrity.
We does. And she came on to Positive Talk, and we had just such a great time, and we talked about what she does, and I'm going to let her tell us what she does and what her podcast, and which I like to call a radio show like this one, is all about. Heidi, welcome to our world, and I'm so glad that you're here, because this is such an important topic, and you've got a great take on it. Would you explain?
Thank you. Yes. So I am the host of the 2-time award-winning podcast, The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants, where I interview immigrants about their journey coming to the United States. We talk about the cultural shocks that they experienced when they first moved here. We talked about if they were able to visit their home country, how was that experience? And then we also talk about what does the American dream mean to them? And I also provide them this space to highlight their businesses, because the majority of immigrants are small business owners, which we know is the backbone of our economy. And so I love sharing that journey too, just how they started their business, who they help, and all the good things. So that is my podcast.
You know, we talk a great deal about illegal immigration and those people that are here and stuff, but we fail to talk about the people who are contributing. They came from another country, but they are contributing mightily to the human experience here in the United States and the American dream because of all the things that they do. They are the most hardworking group of people that I personally have ever met. And they operate their own businesses. They are the backbones of many, many companies here in the United States, from roofing and construction to the restaurant industry to the hospitality industry. They show up every day for work. They pay their taxes, and they do a great job. And so I'm really glad that you do that podcast. What motivated you to do that?
Yes, so my parents are immigrants themselves from the Dominican Republic. They immigrated in the 90s. So I was born here. So first generation immigrant, Dominican American. And their story, and really my husband's story as well, is what inspired me to start the podcast. Because when I would hear about immigration, it was always about politics, right? It was always the political side of things, and it was always in a negative light or a negative rhetoric. They're stealing our jobs. You're bringing drugs. Like all these negative stereotypes have been painted on immigrants and immigration. And so I remember reading an article one day. It was literally an immigrant. She came from Kenya, and she was just sharing the cultural shocks that she had experienced after moving from Kenya. I think it was like during her first year of living in the United States, and so that article really struck me because I was like, I don't see that. I don't hear what happens once immigrants come and they migrate. What is the process? We don't hear about any of that. And so I remember going to my husband after reading that article, and I was like, hey, you came at the young age of 9 years old. Do you remember how you felt, the experience? And, he's, in his middle age now. And he's like, yes, I remember very vividly, even though I was really small, because it was a significant experience in his life. And so as he's telling me in full details, like the first day of living here in the United States, that's really where it stemmed from. I was like, I want to share immigrant stories. I want to leave the politics aside. That's already messy and that's already loud. I want to uplift and share the stories, the process. And a lot of my guests do tell me that in my podcast is the first time that they're actually sharing the immigration aspect or process of their story, because they say people don't ask. People are not curious to ask how that is.
Exactly. And Dr. Shelley, would you like to welcome Heidi to the show?
You already know. I am so excited to meet you and be here in the space with you. I mean, I have literally a laundry list of questions that I would love to ask. Yes. Oh, yes, I come with questions. And as you've noticed, audience, we don't have Dr. Dave today. He is out somewhere in the Amazon rainforest, Colombia. I don't know where Dr. Dave is, but apparently they don't have internet. So y'all know he is loving all of that. But I will definitely do my best to, kind of present that more conservative perspective, because the truth of the matter is, it is many more of our conservative right-leaning folks that have a lot of the visceral reactions when we talk about immigration, to the point where they use dehumanizing terms like alien, yes, as opposed to saying an undocumented immigrant. And it just continues to feed into the negativity. And so without further ado, I would love to just get right in and ask, when it comes to this work around immigration, there is a legal way to do it. There is an illegal way to do it. We've all understood that. And yes, as someone who has never broken a speeding law, we know that we never break laws in America.
No, not at all.
Laws don't ever get in the way of actually us doing things the right way. Says every construction, and fire marshal, all the things that we know. We always, sometimes the rules of the law can be cumbersome. And so I would just like to ask, first of all, what is the appropriate term for people that are in this country and may be immigrants, documented or undocumented? And how does that term, when you hear illegal alien, how does that impact people? What does that do for people? So I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, so the technical term is undocumented. So an undocumented immigrant, which really just means that they don't have legal status in the United States. So legal status is you're either a permanent resident, which is a green card, or you're a U.S. citizen, right? There are people who do have legal status that are protective or temporary. So like the TPS, or the temporary protective status, which is when someone comes from a country who's going through a hardship and the government issues that. And then there's also like temporary student visas, worker visas, and things like that that are for a short term, or a visitor's visa, right? So you can get that as well. Usually, I think the maximum that you can be in the country is 6 months, and then you have to, go back and then come back in. So those are the legal immigration statuses for here in the United States. Now, you become undocumented again if you overstay your legal status, right? That is usually the majority of way that people become undocumented is by coming with a visa, and then they stay over their limited time. So if they are a student, for example, and they are supposed to be here for 4 years and they don't apply for an extension, or they don't get a job to be able to, switch their status or stay, then they become undocumented. Another major way that people do that is also with the visiting visa, right? So they come, they visit, they may either change their mind with their intention of, staying in the United States, and then they overstay their visa and they become undocumented and things like that. Unfortunately, the rhetoric with the undocumented immigrants is that people are doing it through the southern border. So like they are coming through the border and not going to a point of entry, and so they are sneaking in. Yes, that is one way that other people become undocumented, but the majority way, like data shows that the majority way that people become undocumented is by overstaying their visa. So they come legally.
Let me make sure I understand this. Hold on, because I want to make sure our readers, our listeners heard you. And I think Kevin's going to make
Dr. Shelley, we need to take our first break and then ask that question when we come back, because I know it's going to be, dynamic. We'll be right back. It's just 43 seconds, so stay with us, everybody. Here is another point to ponder by Positive Talk Radio. The world is full of people who would die for someone they love. But what about living for them? Waking up early to take care of your health. Letting go of the habits that steal your years. Choosing rest instead of running yourself empty. The truth is, your family doesn't want a hero who dies for them. They want a parent who stays. A friend who grows old with them. A soul who chooses life every single day. Don't just die for love. Live for it. And welcome back to Unscripted Politics. Dr. Shelley Jones-Holt is here, and we've got a special guest, Heidi De La Cruz. And Dr. Shelley, I turn it over to you.
I'm actually really interested in this, because the image that we get, especially from conservative or far-right leaning media, is that there are like these very creepy, evil drug dealing rapists that are crawling under fences, or climbing through tunnels, and they're sneakily slithering their way underneath this border, right underneath the noses of course, far left, whatever, and, infiltrating and invading our country and stealing the jobs that are rightly belonging to Americans. But what I'm hearing you say is that the data is showing a different story, and that in actuality, it's many people that are coming in on either visiting or student visas that overextend their stay. Why would someone overextend their stay and move into that illegal status? Like, what would make them want to break American laws after we've been so kind as to allow you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because they do, quote unquote, come the legal way, right? They have a visitor's visa or student visa or whatever, and then they end up extending their stay. So it could be one or two things. They either had the intention of moving to the United States, and so they applied for their visitor's visa because they weren't able to get any other way, right? So another way would be like either your family sponsors you, your spouse, or like a fiance. So if you get married with a U.S. citizen, they can sponsor you. A job could sponsor you, or you could get the diversity lottery, or you could do the asylum or, refugee. So if you're not able to find any of those routes to be able to come to the United States, then, visitor's visa it is. And then they could come with the intention of moving and staying here, and then trying to change their status once they're already in the country, right? Because you're already in, your foot is in, then you just have to figure out a way to change your status, which actually is really, really hard. So, it's not something that you're definitely encouraged to do. No immigration attorney will encourage you to do that, because again, that is, breaking the law, because you're in a visitor's visa. Your intention is to visit and then go back. But if you're coming with the intention to stay, that's already breaking the law right there. So That's usually what happens. It's like, or, they do come with, the intention to stay here for a little bit. And then they realize like, hey, the United States really has all these opportunities. I want to, change jobs or whatever the case may be. And then they realize, hey, maybe I want to stay, try to find another route to stay. So it depends on the intention that comes to that. But that's what the data shows. It's usually, come legal and then a legal route, and then they overstay the visas and then become undocumented, unfortunately.
So when it comes to this undocumented status, okay, sorry, one more question, and then I promise you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because there's also this image, and let me know if you're not sure about the data, but that it is an overwhelming number or a majority of the people that are immigrating to this country are coming from South America or Spanish-speaking countries. Okay. Is that really the case, or does the data speak to something different?
It really depends on the year that you're looking at, right? Because, we had the influx of Venezuelan immigrants who were coming to seek asylum because of the crisis that was going on in Venezuela. And then we had that one year where there was a lot of Haitians coming after their president got kidnapped and killed and stuff. So like that and then the gangs literally took over the country. So like that caused turmoil in the country, so it's not safe. So so it really depends on the year that you're looking at the data. So it's going to show different stories, and that's the thing that I really encourage people to do. Like, you hear on the media, whatever, they're coming, they're invading our country, but it's like we have to be a critical thinkers for a little bit here. It's like, okay, who's coming? Why are they coming? What is going on in their home country that is leading people to leave? Because I promise you, I mean, I speak to immigrants all the time. A lot of times they're not leaving because they want to. A lot of times they're leaving because something is going on that is unsafe in their home country, and they are not either, they can't find food, they want a better safety. There's literally, threats to their lives. And that all needs to be proven when you're asking for asylum in the United States. All of that needs to be proven. And the approval rate for asylum cases are actually really, really low. So a lot of asylum cases do not even get approved. So people can either appeal them, or then they have to, self-deport back to their home country or try to seek asylum somewhere else.
So then how does this weigh in when you have, this asylum is so difficult to achieve, yet we saw earlier this year that the President of the United States allowed, and I forget the full number because the number keeps changing, of people from South Africa here.
Refugees.
Okay, so how many refugees were there from South Africa that came, and from the Ukraine and Russia who came as a result of that war? And why don't we hear about as much of the crime and such that these demographics commit as we do around the Venezuela, Mexico, Haitian, Cuban,
For sure.
mindset?
So the biggest difference between an asylum seeker and a refugee is asylum seeker, you have to be on U.S. soil. So our current law says that you have to be on U.S. soil to seek asylum, right? So that's why a lot of, let's say, Venezuelans went through the southern border because they crossed, right, the jungle, they crossed through Mexico to get to the southern border to then say, hey, I need to seek asylum because you're supposed to be on U.S. soil. Now, that did change a little bit with the previous administration because they had the app. So people were able to request appointments through the app. So they didn't necessarily have to be on U.S. soil. A lot of them were requesting appointments in Mexico, and then they would wait until their appointments and then go to that point of entry to then be able to go to their immigration appointment, right? So a refugee, they actually go through the International Agency for Refugees. It's a worldwide organization. It's not just for the United States, and they apply for the refugee status. The organization does the vetting for us, right? So even before they come to the United States, they are vetted for years, and they have to go through physical and vaccines and get their paperwork together, and they have to share their traumatic story over and over and over again. And then they are, if they're found, their story to be true, that they are, fleeing persecution or there is a civil war going on in their country, then they see which country, so it's not always the United States, they see which country is able to take them in as refugees. And so the United States has always had a cap of how many refugees we take per year. And I don't know what the number is now, but it's the lowest that we've ever had this year. So then that's when the current administration decided, is like, hey, we're only going to take this amount of refugees and then only from this country. And so that was the biggest misconception that I saw during the political during the election cycle, I kept seeing right-leaning media talking about undocumented immigrants. I'm gonna call them that because I'm not going to dehumanize them. Undocumented immigrants coming and taking apartments and getting food stamps and getting all these things. And I remember watching this video. The reporter was talking to this lady. She was a representative of a Catholic organization, nonprofit organization. And when the representative was talking about the program, about how, yes, they were going to accept people, and then they had these apartments. They didn't have to pay rent, for, I think, for like the first 3 months, that they were going to help them and, you know, provide the food stamps and everything, and then even help them find jobs. I was like, hold on, they're not talking about undocumented immigrants. They are talking about the refugee resettlement program, which I volunteered with Bethany Christians. I was like, she's talking about the same process that refugees who are vetted go through to help them start their lives in the United States. So what it is these nonprofit organizations will collect donations. There used to be a government fund, right, for them to help them get started in the US. So they helped them with their rent for the first 3 months. They did give them food stamps to be able to get off on their feet. And then they had I remember our program, we had to help them apply for jobs because a lot of them don't know our system. So we had people volunteer helping them to apply for jobs. And then once they were able to, provide for themselves, then they didn't need the rent assistance, and they didn't need the food stamps assistance. So they were mixing these political or these immigration statuses, saying that undocumented immigrants were taking all of these benefits, but it wasn't undocumented immigrants. It was refugees.
Which is a completely different thing.
From where?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. And where were most of the refugees coming from?
They were usually coming from Afghanistan, like a lot of countries that are now having a lot of conflicts. So like we had a few last year from Afghanistan, and I can't remember what other countries, Haiti and things like that. So it's just like really just looking at different countries that are having, civil unrest and things like that. That's usually where they're coming from. So they have to fly here to the United States. They can't cross like the Venezuelans would through the southern border. So like I remember going to the airport to like greet them, and they have, that it was them because they had the organization's like a lanyard of the organization. And so then we would meet them with their social worker, and then they would check the paperwork to make sure that it was them and things like that. And then we would help them like settle them in the apartments and things like that. So various different countries.
Gotcha.
And they were vetted. And this is also a bone of contention. They were vetted before they got here.
For years and years. Like by the time they get to the United States, they've literally have been with a refugee status for like almost 10 years. So this is not an overnight process at all.
And the people who came from Afghanistan came to us because the Taliban took over when we left, and a lot of these people had been friends of the United States military, and it helped us. And now their lives and their families' lives were in jeopardy because of them helping us, right?
That is a big betrayal that the United States have just done with the Afghans, because they were helping us. And now I feel like it's just such a slap in the face to them. And it's like,
but it's
that
not
just
the first
shows
time this has happened, Heidi. This is
correct. Yeah. And it's just like,
it happened to our Hmong brothers and sisters that were helping us during the Vietnam War. It happened to the Japanese during
yes.
before that. It happened to the Koreans before that. Like, this is not something that's brand new. And that's something that when we talk about, one of the things we talk about a lot on this show is the impact of the lack of knowledge of history that people have, because they think, oh, well, this is brand new because of, the war in Iraq and Iran. All of a sudden now we're offering, this asylum. But in 2005, we had several tens of thousands of Hmong refugees that came here that had been living in concentration camps for decades after the Vietnam War. And we wanted to pretend like, oh, we lost the war. We'll bump them. Let's just, leave them over there. And they're like, hold on, you can't do that to people. And the United States is creating a history of doing this, which is problematic. And now that we're resolving it, we want to pretend this is an immigration issue, and it's not. It is an issue with war. And
reminded me of the history of like why we actually have asylum here in the United States, because of the Jewish ship that we denied during, what was it, World War II or World War One? I can't remember which one. They denied a shipload of Jews, and then they ended up getting killed.
Exactly. And it was because of what happened after the Holocaust.
Yes.
And many of our Jewish brethren, and what actually happened after that, because our government is sneaky and not always telling the truth, is they also brought over many of the Nazis that were banished from Germany. And that is why you see stories of people that were coming here, Jewish people who were coming here for asylum, that were actually seeing some of their oppressors from the concentration camps at random places like the grocery store. They would be and they would go, wait a minute, I know that face. I know who that is. And so these things that we don't necessarily talk about when it comes to immigration, but what do you see as some of the biggest misconceptions that people have around the purpose or reasons why we have immigration? That may be something big we can get into after the break.
And, yes, let's pick that up after the break. I also want to ask you, because the Supreme Court is looking at the law that says if you're born here, you're automatically a U.S. citizen. Yeah. And I firmly believe, as we go to break, that if you came here 30 years ago when the rules were a little bit different and you had 4 children and they are all under the age of 18 and they're all U.S. citizens and you're not, we need to give those people a path to citizenship so that they can stay here and raise their kids and raise their families, because those kids end up in places that we wouldn't want them to be, I think. And I'd love your opinion on that when we come back. We're talking to Heidi De La Cruz. She is the Meryl Streep of podcasting, and Dr. Shelley Jones Holt. And this is a fascinating discussion. And please stay with us, because this is we have needed this perspective that Heidi is bringing to us in the worst way, because there's a lot of misinformation out there that we are going to dispel during the course of this show. So thank you, Heidi, for being here. You're going to have to come back. I can tell you that right now. And we'll be right back after this halftime break.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
Are you looking for your daily dose of inspiration? Stay connected to all your favorite shows, music, and news with the Brushwood Media Network app. From Positive Talk Radio to Greatest Vibes Unplugged and so many more uplifting voices around the world, everything you need is right in one place. It's easy to use, too. Always available and designed to keep you inspired 24 hours a day. Go to BrushwoodMediaNetwork.com and download the app, and you will always have Brushwood Media available on your smartphone. Download it now and make inspiration and music and conversation part of your everyday.
And welcome back to Unscripted Politics. My name is Kevin McDonald. Dr. Shelley Jones Holt is right there. Dr. David, we're not sure, but I think he's been deported. I'm kidding. He's going to, when he hears this, he's going to go a little crazy about that. But that's in any event, Heidi De La Cruz is with us, and she is an expert on immigration, and she talks to people that are here and their American experience, which is unique to every individual that is here. So, Dr. Shelley, did you have a question, or yeah?
Well, I think we were jumping into the concept of birthright citizenship, but before we do, I just wanted to ask about, in general, when it comes to people being here and when their immigration status expires, if you will, how does that affect people, psychologically? Like, what's life like for them when they're here and they know they're undocumented? What does that look like, feel like, sound like for these people?
Yeah, so I can tell you two different stories. One of my guests from my podcast, she was 16 at the time, so her older sister petitioned for her parents and for her, And so they don't know what happened in regards to the paperwork, if the attorney didn't file it correctly, if there was something that was done incorrectly. They don't know, but it was taking a really long time to get the paperwork and everything. And so she remembers that her parents were able to get their residency, but her residency didn't come as a 16-year-old, so she's a minor. And they ended up switching attorneys. And so when they switched the attorney was like, there's actually an order of deportation for you, for her as a 16-year-old. And she explains in the episode that she just literally felt like she wanted the earth to like open up and like swallow whole, because she was like, I did not want to cause any attention to myself. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to like do anything. So as a 16-year-old, you're in high school. And at the time, she was like, my friends were all talking about like, where were they going to go to college? They were getting their licenses. They were moving on with their lives. And she was stuck. She couldn't do anything because of this order of deportation. So when someone becomes undocumented, it's literally like they can't do anything. Like they can't, get a driver's license or anything like that. And yeah, so she was just like, I literally wanted to become invisible. I didn't want to cause any trouble. I didn't want to get in trouble. All she was focused on was going to school, getting good grades until that got resolved. And so fortunately, it was able to get resolved and she was able to get her paperwork. Now, I also had a friend growing up who I had no idea she was undocumented until I can't even remember what was the conversation about. But I think it actually was about the driver's license as well. Like we literally grew up together, and then same thing around that time, everybody was like starting to drive and all that. And so then I remember asking her like, hey, like, are you going to do that? Are you going to, try to get your license? And then that's when she told me like that she couldn't. And then I was like, what do you mean you can't? Like in my mind, as a, as a teenager, you don't talk about immigration. And I was like, what do you mean you can't? And so then she explained that her and her family were all undocumented. And I was like in shock because she was a regular kid, went to school, played sports. Her dad was in the construction business, had his own business doing construction. They were renting a house. And I was like, in my mind, like, how does this work? Like, what do you mean you guys are undocumented? And so then I remember also when the Obama administration was talking about the whole DACA recipient things, she was the first person I called and told her. And then she vividly remembers that, like, she was like, don't play with my emotions. Are you serious? I was like, go check the news. Like, I literally heard it right now. So go check. So I just remember like the excitement in her voice to be like, man, my hard work in school is going to pay off. Because, she, even though she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to go to college, she was still dedicated and getting straight A's and trying to be better than everyone else to kind of like prove that she belonged and that she's not, a troublemaker or anything like that. So it's really about like and I have actually, I just remember another example. I have another person who is still going through the asylum process. And I remember she was driving me somewhere and I was like, why is she driving the speed limit? Why is she going so slow? Like, it's just things that like, I don't think about twice because I'm a US citizen, but it's like, she's literally thinking like, I can't even get a speeding ticket because I'm still trying to get my asylum case approved. So it's just like things like that. Like they really try to like blend in, not cause issues, not cause trouble. I mean, yes, there always is that one person, who does commit crimes and things like that. But the majority, if you look at the data, again, the majority of immigrants or undocumented immigrants usually do not, break the laws or try to get
right.
them.
I mean, and that makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, and it's almost like, I hate to use this comparison, but I'm gonna throw it out there. It like what you described sounds a lot like living like a Black man in America. I mean, that's what
does not cause any issue. Yes.
Driving slow. I'm like, why you want to spin? Oh no, we got to look where we are. We in Clovis. We're not going to play.
Trying to stay off the radar, literally. Yeah.
Literally, like trying to make sure because that people are after you, and that feeling of knowing that someone is after you, or if the consequences for you are so much steeper, it is counterintuitive to believe that these people who would be here undocumented and really running for their lives are going to now go out and go on a crime spree. Like that to me just doesn't make sense. But that's what's in the minds of many is that, well, they broke the law by being here, so they must be career criminals. As everybody else who, goes a couple miles over the speed limit. Are you really, considering yourself a career criminal at that point? But thank you for sharing that perspective, because I think sometimes people forget that these are people running for their lives and living in fear in this country. They're not just living here, soaking it up, going, oh, thank you. Let me go break some laws now because I'm here. And so when it comes to, we were going to talk about birthright citizenship, Kevin.
Well, but before we go there, there's two things I want to bring up. First of all is it's kind of like getting your Screen Actors Guild card, because in order for you to claim asylum as you have described it before the app, you have to be on U.S. soil. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen that changed. So, yeah.
So if you have to be on U.S. soil in order to apply for it, that means that you have to cross, I don't know, the border to get into the United States to be able to claim asylum if your home country is overrun by terrorists or overrun by gang members and it's not safe for you to be there. So it doesn't make any sense to me that we would then say those people are coming over the border illegally, but because they have no choice, they've got to get on. Situation.
Yeah, when I went to the border in January of this year, it was literally the week after the new administration came in, so they had just taken off the app. And what we learned was that the app was actually helping with human trafficking, because you would get the appointment through the app, and it would be at one of the point of entries, throughout the southern border. So then they would go to the immigration court, but people didn't really have to travel through Mexico, risk themselves being in contact with the cartel, risk themselves being in contact with, things like that, and being trafficked. They would fly. So like, let's say, for example, they were in South Mexico. They got the app, were able to get an appointment. They were able to fly from South Mexico to the border and then go to their appointment. So they didn't have to cross. So like that actually helped with human trafficking, and that actually helped with women, because they also told us that women, when they cross through that border, they are paying either cash or with their body. There's no other choice. So that app was actually helping with the human trafficking. But since it was taken away, then it's like, okay, well, now we're back to square one, because then people are going to have to cross through Mexico again, or through, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Beast, that train that people usually ride on top. Like they weren't having to do that because they had the app to be able to apply for appointments.
So you're telling us that this app existed and now it doesn't?
Yes, it was brought on through the previous administration, and then it was taken away. And when it was taken away, they literally took away like over 30,000 appointments when it was just vanished. And I met two families who were hoping to get appointments, who had to like do plan B and C because the app literally was taken away the week before we got there when we went to the border. It was so heartbreaking to meet those families.
They were trying to do the right thing and to get the appointment and to go do that. And then they took the app away, and then it was like, oh, sorry. Yeah. I guess you're going to have to, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they changed the rules on them, which is unfortunately what happens in these situations.
And before we go to break, there is one thing, and then we're going to talk about the DACA, and also the Supreme Court is looking at birthright citizenship. But I would love everybody that's listening to this, and you guys may know this and you may not, and we'll find out. But everybody that's listening to this, I want you to tell me where this particular thing is inscribed. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Where is that written? And we need to take our break. And when we come back, if you don't know, I think one of these ladies do, and they're going to tell us and stuff, because that's what America used to be about. Taking care and inviting people in rather than they're the other. And also, yeah. So we'll be right back after this real quick message, and stay with us, everybody.
Not every song changes you, but the right ones do. At Greatest Vibes Unplugged, we share music that hits deeper, no filters, no noise, just pure sound with soul. This is your reminder that light still exists, and sometimes it sings. And remember, you can look up in the sky and see the stars, but still not see the light.
And welcome back to Unscripted Politics. You know, Dr. Shelley, I've got to train you on coming back and doing the coming back from a break thing. So next time,
back from a break thing.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, ladies, where is that inscribed? And do either of you know?
Our Lady Liberty.
Statue of Liberty.
The Statue of Liberty, which was given to us by France way back when.
Didn't that happen?
I heard something about that.
Yeah, we need that back. We need to take our rights.
That is hilarious.
There are people in this country that are saying, "Oh, let's give that back to them." That's not. I don't.
We
know.
don't believe that.
Yeah. But you see, the Statue of Liberty is in New York, and that's where Ellis Island is. And most of the immigrants that came via boat, and they came from Europe. And so they were all had a paler complexion than some of our other folks. And I just so.
You
Anyway,
open the door, Kevin. I got to ask my question. You open the door.
I know. Go ahead.
So before we get into birthright citizenship, because I do want us to talk about that, what do you see as the challenges, if you will? And I'm going to frame it this way. As an African American in America, there is a very mixed feeling around immigration, immigrants, and all immigrants, but especially those of Latin descent who try to come here and act like they're a little bit better than those of us who have been here. You know, the I'm not black, I'm Dominican crowd, you know, and that.
Oh my God, yes.
Right. And it's this anti-blackness that underscores that already exists in many countries. But when folks come here now, you have folks coming here from another country, may or may not be documented, and many times interacting in low-income communities, which is where many people of African descent have been relegated to for literally centuries in this country. And so you get this mix of poor people, essentially, who are trying to one-up each other. And my question is, how much does this play a role in folks' immigration story, and how much are immigrant communities doing to address anti-blackness and the fact that they're kind of ostracizing what could be an ally who knows how to survive in this country and has for over 400 years, just saying. And you know, how is that playing a role in the immigration story?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question, because it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, the anti-blackness, yes, very, very much in a lot of the Latin American countries, and you know, we know that this comes back from colonization and being taught over and over that white is better if you're darker skinned, you know, and things like that. So like even within my own families, I've heard, you know, comments, things like that. Remember, my husband told me that one of his aunts told him, like, oh, make sure to marry white so you can fix the race. And so they already come with that anti-blackness, and then they get here and then they see, you know, African Americans, and then they all of a sudden think that they're better than them because of the anti-blackness that lives inside them. And I try to speak out about it as much as I can and try to educate and things like that. But it does, you know, it is so embedded in our culture from colonization and just history, and, you know, telling us to like straighten our hair so it's pretty, or
lighten your skin.
Lighten your skin, or just don't go out into the sun too much because you don't want to get too dark. Right. So all of that lives a lot inside of our culture as well. And I do see online sometimes other immigrants making ignorant comments, be anti-immigration immigrant comments, and I'm just like, So you really just want to like pull the ladder from outside of you, or like close the door behind you because you're here, but you don't want other people to be here. Like it just makes no
Crabs in a
sense to
barrel
me.
mentality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And so
And
I mhm.
Go ahead. No, I appreciate what you're saying. No, please.
Yeah, no, it's just like it's embedded again in our culture and in our upbringing. But I definitely again try to speak out as much as I can about it. And yeah, as much as I can, and educate and things like that, because that to me we're all one. Like there's a struggle.
Yes.
I'm not going to compare my struggle with African American struggle because it's not the same, but it's like we all
Exactly.
struggle. We need to unite together to help each other, because the more we help each other, lift each other up, we'll win. We'll all win. I don't know why the mentality of like, if I win, you can't win type of stuff. I don't get that.
Well,
How
it's
do
a
you?
mentality that go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, no, I was just going to say, can you just please repeat what you just said about we are all what?
Oh, we're all one. We're all one.
And I couldn't agree more. I just wanted you to bring that up because if there are any people that are considering or of immigrant status here and have that anti-Blackness, I need folks to understand that that is working against you.
Yes.
And there are communities here that are more than willing to help and support and serve. And, you know, contributing to the negative parts of this country is never going to make America what we know it can be.
Yeah.
And so people that are coming here, I'm kind of mixed, if I'm being honest, on the immigration perspective. But anyone who does come here, I am expecting that you want to make this country better. Help us address some of our inherent issues. And part of those issues have to do with how we deal with difference. And if you don't like the way that you're being treated, how about we not perpetuate that? Which unfortunately, and I just have to put this out there because it's fact, that many of the Jewish brothers and sisters that came, many of the Chinese and Japanese brothers and sisters that came, they enveloped themselves in this anti-Blackness to be closer to what they viewed as powerful. And now it's swooping full circle and coming back to bite them in the tush, because this mindset in society that there are some people that belong here and there are some people that don't is part of the problem that we have in this country. And it's led to us now trying to get rid of one of the basic American rights, which is birthright citizenship. If you are born here, we consider you from here. And now, because of this inability to deal with difference that America has essentially made part of its culture, we're thinking of getting rid of that. And that's going to affect people across the board. This is not just an immigrant issue. And how far back do we go? Question mark. How far back do we go? If we're really going to talk about eliminating birthright citizenship, what could that mean for people from your perspective, Heidi?
Yeah, I mean, it really, oh my gosh, that's a lot too, because it's in our Constitution. And from what I hear, like a lot of people who are right leaning, like they go with the Constitution. And it's like now all of a sudden would change that, because why? Like,
They
I don't
go
know.
with the Constitution unless it doesn't serve
There you
their
go.
ultimate goals.
That part. Law and order to the law wants me.
Yeah.
Different.
Correct.
Very wise.
Like, what? I honestly, I mean, I think that for me, this is the first time. So correct me if I'm wrong in regards to the history. This is the first time that I'm hearing of the 14th. It's the 14th Amendment, right? It's being challenged for the birthright citizenship. And in my mind, I couldn't comprehend why they would try to take that away. But as I dug deeper, it was just like they called people like these anchor babies, where like people are coming to the US to have babies so then they can get benefits. Is that the thing that they're looking at, right?
That's part
That
of it.
is the fallacy that some folks have said in order to justify this behavior that they want to eliminate.
So then let's think back of history. What about all the slavery descendants that were forced here? What happened to them?
that was one of the reasons why that particular amendment was passed, was because we now had a bunch of citizens that used to be non-citizens and less than, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Shelley, but they were slaves, and now and their children were not citizens either. And so they had to do something to fix that, because these people were all born here. So when the Emancipation Proclamation happened and they became free, then they had to make the determination of who was a citizen and who wasn't. And the easiest way to do that, if you're born here, you are a citizen here. Am I correct in that, Doctor?
That's a pretty, I mean, it's a little generalized, but yes, that is the basic overall premise, is that we had birthright citizenship was a result of trying to figure out what to do with all these people who previous to that would have been born and considered property. Remember the enslaved Africans that were brought over here forcefully to work and build America, there was never a pathway to citizenship. And so if you look historically at various amendments when it comes to citizenship and voting, it has to do with a pathway to power, not necessarily citizenship for the government. That because the more people that you had that were citizens, the more representation that you received. All of these issues come all the way back to, the issue of states' rights and federal rights and representation and no taxation without representation. Like all of that is enveloped together in this idea of birthright citizenship. And what's happened, and now I will tell you this, I have heard of stories of people coming over. Being from Southern California, I do know some folks that came over in that 8th, 9th month, and all of a sudden, you pretend like you don't know the baby's about to pop out. And when the baby comes out here, then that baby's a citizen, and who's going to get rid of a mother and a child? Like, we do that to anybody but enslaved Africans. So now they're like, okay, well, we'll keep them together. And then, the baby grows up, the baby's a citizen, the mom, did what they were, the belief was is that the parents were eventually, now that the lineage is going to be citizens and the parents are eventually going to die off. So it's a moot cause, right? But now we're seeing it as a much bigger issue. And so now birthright citizenship is becoming a thing. And because of programs like WIC and, taking care of kids under 5 and many of them being born in poverty, and that's where you get the, oh, well, they're taking benefits and my tax dollars are paying for you because you came here, had a baby, didn't have any money, got on services for the baby, and now you're taking my stuff that I paid for as an American citizen. You can see how this whirlwind around birthright citizenship becomes an issue now when it was created for one reason, but it's been exploited, if you will, by some folks. And now, we're trying to take it away across the board. But again, that's what leads me to ask the question, how are you going to actually implement this? It's another thing. Go ahead.
No, and then I was going to ask, like, what are they looking to replace it with? So how would one become a citizen then?
The same thing to replace the Affordable Care Act with nothing.
Yeah, they haven't figured that part out yet. It's like
we haven't figured that part out yet. Why would we have a plan before we take away
concepts of plans? Concepts of plan.
It's like the Republican health care plan since 15. They still haven't done anything
2 weeks,
yet.
Man. We got it's coming in 2 weeks.
Okay. And by the way, we are talking with Heidi De La Cruz. And if somebody wants to listen to your podcast, how do they do it, Heidi?
Yes, they can watch on YouTube or they can listen on Apple or Spotify. It is The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast.
And you are sensational. Can I ask a big favor?
Yes.
We run out of time. Will you come back next week?
Next week, I will be actually on vacation, but I can take my equipment, sure. or in the next 3 weeks, because we're not done with you yet, because I feel like there was so much more, that we need to touch on, and I love the historical perspective that Dr. Shelley brought on, because I even wanted to mention, like, even in the inception of our country, like, when they brought criminals, like I was doing history on immigration, and literally when our country was being built, people in England, they had the choice of like, okay, you committed this crime, you can either go to jail, be hung, or you can go to the United States, which wasn't the United States at the time. But that's literally, they were bringing criminals from Europe because they didn't want to deal with them back then. So we have so much more to touch on.
And they did the same thing to Australia. In Australia, the people there, they're lots of fun these days, I got to tell you. But their background was they were criminals from England as well. And Dr. Shelley Jones Holt, tell us about your book that's now out and available.
It is out. It is available. Folks are reading it. And I have to say, one of the readers is a very, very conservative friend of mine. I mean, like we literally do not talk politics. We've been friends for over 20 years. We cannot talk politics. But she did purchase a copy of my book, and she called me last week and she said, oh my gosh, this is the first, I don't want to get teary-eyed. This is the first time I've read something that was addressing race and the history of this country and a personal journey where I don't feel attacked. And that is my goal with speaking about race, where you live, learn, and earn. It's that anything that we cannot discuss holds power over us. And I don't think any American wants to have this whole cloud of race holding power over them. So I wrote a workbook to help people walk through this journey and understand how race impacts them and impacts their lives. And so I want to thank her for giving me a call. I thank you, Ruth, for calling me and telling me about your story. And I appreciate that I was able to write something that, for her, being from South Carolina, as she calls herself, the Southern Belle, and saying that she read the book and she did not feel attacked. She did not feel like her whiteness was threatened. She felt enlightened. And that is what Speaking About Race for You Live, Learn, and Earn does for folks. So order it, irp.edu.
And that's the only way that we are going to change this whole thing, is the understanding and to create that. So congratulations on the book, Dr. Shelley. Heidi, you get the last word. Anything you'd like to say?
I would like to repeat what I said earlier. We are all one. Uniting together, it'll be better for us than, pointing fingers and tearing each other down, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all just want to provide for our families, live in peace and not in fear, and live whatever the American dream is for us.
That is just perfectly said. And Dr. Dave, if you're listening from wherever you are, I hope that you get deported soon and we come back.
Dr. Dave.
So I want to thank everybody for listening. And Heidi De La Cruz, your podcast again is called
The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants.
You are sensational. Thank you for being here.
Alrighty then, that's a wrap on Unscripted Politics, where we don't sugarcoat, play nice, or pretend we have it all figured out. But we do keep it real. If today's episode made you think, laugh, or yell at your speaker, good, mission accomplished. If you're feeling more informed, slightly outraged, or just glad somebody finally said it, do us a favor and like, share, and argue responsibly. Until next time, stay sharp, stay loud, and stay unscripted. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got.